You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we are blessed. We are blessed to have as our guest Paul Green. I should say Dr. Paul Green. He, of course, everybody would know who exists in the city of Chicago. He is chairman of the City Club of Chicago. Look, it's one of the best deals in town. Great lunch, fantastic speakers, and most of all, you get the most amiable person in the world, Paul Green. Paul,
can't argue with that. Keep going on a roll.
Paul Green also is the director of the Institute for Politics at Roosevelt University. That is the IFP, not to be confused with the competitive IOP. But today, if you stay tuned, you're going to find out so much about the mayor's race in Chicago. Who's going to win? Will Rahm win? Has he already won? You might find out whether Bruce Rauner will succeed or whether he'll be sabotaged by the Democrats. Oh, it's going to be so exciting. So exciting. So Paul Green, who's going to win the mayor's election?
Right now you have to say, well, Mayor Emanuel is the favorite. He has, his only competition is getting 50% plus one of the vote.
Yes, so will he do it, sir?
It's doable. In 2011, he had approximately 55% of the vote. This time I think he's going to be right around that number, but you know, a month to go, anything can happen.
So right as of now, you're saying if the election were held today, your prediction would be, the election is on February 24th.
Correct.
Your prediction would be, as of the day we're taping, which is January 30th, Rahm Emanuel would get what percent of the vote? I want a number, I don't want an explanation.
I would say he would get a little over 50%, given the fact that
your best shot, a little over doesn't count as a number. I need a number, Paul.
If I knew the number, Jeff, I
just
would
give it to me, Paul. Don't fight
52.46.
There you go. It's like pi. 52 point what?
46. You have to. Dealing with you, Jeff. You know you have to be exact. I think the undecided vote will split that way, but you never know. Things could happen.
So there you heard it here, folks. The show is over. You can go to whatever if you're in the city, flip over to Hannity, flip over to Rachel Maddow. Because if you're in the city, you're watching this at 8:30 p.m. on Monday or on midnight. And if the suburbs, some other time, some other place. But you now know Mayor Rahm Emanuel will be reelected on February 24th. There will be no runoff. To get a runoff, he has to get less than 50% of the vote.
They may still continue, despite what I just said. You have Jesus Garcia, County Board Commissioner. You have Bob Fioretti, a alderman from the 2nd Ward. You have a gentleman named Mr. Wilson, who has never run for office. And you have a man named Mr. Walls, who's run for every office.
Well, Paul, so who would be coming in second place, making your prediction as of January 30th?
I think Jesus Garcia would come in second.
With what number?
I only do it for the winner.
Give us a number.
One of the keys in this, and this is something that's serious, is that when you have a nonpartisan race like this is, all the candidates who are running against Mayor Emanuel want to come in second place and deny him 50% plus one.
Well, they would like to come in first place, but they don't have a chance to do that.
This is a Jeff Berkowitz show, so we have to be realistic.
Right here, Walter Jacobson, sitting where you're sitting just a week or two ago, he said, Rahm has done a good job as mayor, but he's just been a little bit, I'm paraphrasing, a little too arrogant. He'll pay a price. Walter Jacobson said he will pay a price for that in the election. I didn't get to ask him what that price would be, unfortunately. But it seems like the world has changed. He's not going to pay a price for the arrogance. He's not going to pay a price for the closing of the schools. He's not going to pay a price for anything. According to you, he wins 52%. What did he do to turn it?
52.46.
Excuse me, 52.46. What did he do to turn it around?
Well, Jeff, an election eventually comes down to a multiple choice exam. You have a group of candidates, you have them in front of you, and you want to pick the person who can run a multi-billion-dollar corporation, which the city of Chicago is. So it's a big picture, and I think eventually the voters are going to decide who is best to be the leader of the city. There is no doubt that Rahm Emanuel often is his own worst enemy, not necessarily what he does, but how he does it. But again, given the demographics of Chicago, given where the votes are, as you know, I do an analysis of every election going back to 1976. And there's no doubt that there are areas of the city of Chicago where Rahm Emanuel is very strong, and those are high turnout wards. So the key for Emmanuel is to get those wards to turn out, because if you don't vote, you don't count. But again, it's now getting down to crunch time. Who's best to run dealing with this incredible financial mess the city's in? Who is best able to deal with it in a realistic way? And I think that's going to push him over 50% plus one.
When he ran 4 years ago, he said, I think there were 3 major issues. He said they're education, crime, and city finances. Are those 3 the major issues today?
Absolutely.
2015?
Except I would think that they're all really important, and we're dealing with nuances here, but of the 3, and they're all crucial, the city finances is the most important, simply because you have to.
Come on, Paul, you're in education. Education is way more important.
No, not
city
if you,
finances will take care of themselves.
Can I finish my answer?
Probably not.
Not if you can't pay your bills. A government, the chief executive has to find the balance, the budget to pay the bills. We are facing enormous pension debt in the city of Chicago. We are having to compete for jobs. We are having to compete to keep our taxpayers in and avoid what happened to Detroit.
Well, let's get
those are all, not that education and crime aren't important. They are important.
Okay. Quick facts, quick question, quick answer. What's the city budget, Paul? Total number, approximately. Give me a ballpark.
6 or 7 billion.
Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so what people want to get their arms around is roughly the budget for the city of Chicago is about $6 billion. And CPS, Chicago Public Schools, roughly another $6 billion. Is there any other large sum of money out there that is controlled by the city of Chicago? City, because that's $12 billion we're up to now. Anything else that's large, Paul, over $1 billion?
No, but the city of Chicago technically, let me answer, does not control the budget technically of the Board of Education.
Well,
it's a separate
technically,
levy.
But Paul, there's an abstract way of looking, and I do respect you, Paul, and I love you. You know that, okay? Like a brother, okay?
I get carried away here. Go
or
ahead.
like a father, one or the other. I don't know. Anyway, so the point is, what is the point is that you just said, well, technically they don't. The mayor doesn't control. The city of Chicago doesn't control the CPS, Chicago Public School budget. But we're in the world of reality. We're not having an abstract policy.
He appoints the board.
Yes, and therefore he essentially controls that. They do pretty much what he wants.
If they want to stay on the board, yeah.
Yeah. Could he just fire them just like that? Or don't they? You don't need cause or anything. Once you appoint them, you're just subject to
I'm not sure what the law of 95, which gave Rich Daley the ability to run.
But the reality is he could fire.
He has the control of the board. But the point I was trying to make is that when you're looking at deficits, both the city of Chicago and the Board of Education are in serious trouble.
We're getting to that point. I'm just trying to make sure our viewers are with you.
I got you. They're with me.
So they got that. And now what's the problem, Paul? Because to get revenue, you can raise the property tax if you need more. You can raise the sales tax, right?
Yes.
The main sources of revenue for the city of Chicago would be the property tax and the sales tax. Is that right?
Not the property tax. The city of Chicago gets
excuse me. That mostly goes to the schools. If it
goes to schools and to pay off the debt. Yes.
So the main source of revenue at the city of Chicago for their budget, the $6 billion budget, would be?
Well, you have the sales tax. You have the state government. You have the federal government. You have the fees that are charged for all kinds of things. You know, the one in the news today is the red light district and all that. So they get their money from various different sources, and that's why some people are asking for a city income tax and a few other things.
So we'll get to that in a second. But I think Chewy Garcia and maybe Alderman Ferretti says that Rahm Emanuel was nickel and diming the citizens to death.
Well,
because he says no increase in the property tax.
He said it yesterday
and he's
at
right.
the city court.
In the last 3.5 years, no increase in the property tax, right?
Correct.
But he has he not nickel and dimed them to death?
Well, not to death. We're still kicking in Chicago. But the reality is that if you can't deal with the word tax, you deal with the word fee. They need revenue. Where are you going to get it? And so the costs are going up. It's not necessarily in employees, because believe it or not, the Board of Education has more employees than the city of Chicago. So the reality is where are you going to find the revenue from the people who pay the money, the taxpayers, to keep them in the city and still give services to everybody, including those people who are affectionately known as tax takers. It's a very difficult job.
What would you recommend, Professor?
If
you were king.
If I were king. If I were king, I probably would, be someplace else. I would think that the reality is that the best source of revenue is to grow the tax base, but in It's a short term, just like a state, just like what Governor Rauner is going to do. I would think in the next year or two, we're going to have a tax on services.
Okay. So
We are a service economy.
Before we go to that, grow the tax base. You said just like Governor Rauner says.
Is going to do.
And
Governor
if you
Rauner.
grow the tax base, what does that mean? One, you could expand it to cover services.
Yes.
And two, you could grow the economy.
Yes.
But you're saying most of the revenue comes in to the city of Chicago through the sales tax?
They get sales tax, they get money from the state, though there's not as
When
much.
you say money, they get money from the state?
When you pay your state income tax, a portion of that goes to the municipality.
I've heard of this concept called competition. And if we had more, not less competition in the CPS, we had more outlets for people, more opportunities for people in failing CPS schools to go to options like charter schools, like school vouchers, which Governor Rauner believes in.
We'll see.
He said, some would say you could, right now, you may not know this, we spend $15,000 per kid per year in the CPS. So not only would you improve the quality with competition, charter schools and voucher schools, you might cut the cost down 20 to 30%, which would help on the finances. It's your turn.
Not for the city of Chicago. It would help
for the CPS.
CPS.
Okay, but again, that's still, there's pressure on the city of Chicago to do more for CPS in one form or another.
Why do you think
so
they closed 50 schools?
Okay, so it would help, wouldn't it?
It would help, but again, charter schools took a great hit over the last year with the #1 charter school organization, UNO, having their problems.
Yeah, but that was really a sad...
But that was a...
Go ahead, I'll interrupt later.
But that was publicity-wise, that was a blow. You have to admit that.
Publicity-wise?
Absolutely.
Let me just interrupt for one thing, because people like Laura Washington, who I love, and she's been a guest on the show, she talks about UNO, and she wrote extensively about this and the CFO, like something unheard of happened. But when an executive or a high-level official at CPS does this, Laura, I just don't hear much about it. So I'll grant you, there were some things going on, Laura and Professor, there were some things going on with UNO that shouldn't have been, but almost everyone would say the education was actually doing well.
As I was about to
Kids
say.
were doing well. So you know what, as you told me, the last thing, you always say this, you need a little grease, Jeff. You guys don't understand this, but Paul Green does. So if you want the city to function, tell him the grease theory, Paul.
You're asking and answering. Keep going. You're doing a good job.
So
why don't you just interview yourself and I'll just sit here and applaud.
No, talk about your response to what I said about charter schools and vouchers.
Okay, there is still a lot left on the table to see if charter schools are in fact, as a whole, doing better than the public schools. Remember, if you could cherry pick your students, you have an advantage. That is why, Jeff, and I'm sure you, well, let me finish.
I have to interrupt you.
No, you don't have to interrupt. You can stop interrupting and let me finish my sentence.
Yes, sir.
As the top schools in the state of Illinois, you know where they are, don't you? They're in the city of Chicago. They're all the select schools. They cherry pick the best students. The competition to get in one of those schools is enormous, and they're out producing schools like New Trim. Now go ahead. Your turn.
The schools you just referenced, the select enrollment schools, the magnet schools.
Yes.
They're not charter schools in large part. No, because charter schools have to take everybody like CPS who shows up at their door. And if more people show up at a charter school, and they often do because the people in the failing traditional neighborhood schools want an out, you know what they do? They have a lottery. They don't go to the wealthiest kids who've applied. They don't go to the whitest kids who've applied. They don't go to the kids with the highest scores on test grades. So for once, Mr. Green, at least they won't listen to me, could you tell Karen Lewis, could you tell Alderman Ferretti to stop saying nonsense like charter schools are skimming the cream?
You're veering off the road.
What would you like to say about Chicago politics?
Well, so the reality is that what we have going on, a mayoral election is crucial because you also have an aldermanic election in 50 wards, which has a direct impact on all the suburban viewers. Because one of the ideas that's being floated is a commuter tax. If you live in the suburbs and you work in Chicago, you should pay a tax. Commuters come in, they use the roads, they use the police and fire protection.
Who is the mayoral candidate who seems to be pushing
Well,
that
people
the
like Mr. Garcia and Mr. Fioretti have mentioned it. Karen Lewis, of course, when she was before she got ill, had mentioned it at the City Club.
And you should point out, what's the relationship between Karen Lewis and Commissioner Chuy Garcia?
They're very close. She's endorsed him and she's campaigning for him.
And what did she do to get him elected? Did you hear that phrase? She bent his elbow to get him to run. Karen Lewis said, she bent the elbow of Commissioner Chuy Garcia to get him to run.
If you say it, Jeff.
I saw it on Mike Flannery's Sunday morning show, Fox News Sunday, a plug for you.
And I would be against that because you're basically creating a barrier. And today with the service economy, many of those people coming in work in service industries, and service industries can move.
And so it may boomerang.
It has there is no evidence that it really.
Is that why perhaps Rahm Emanuel has not said he supports that?
No.
Right?
Rahm Emanuel, the only time Rahm Emanuel ever talked about a creative new tax is when he was running in 2011 and then dropped it because his opponent at that time, Gary Chico, picked up on it. Rahm Emanuel talked about a service tax. Jeff, give you a fact. We are still taxing ourselves based on a 1930s economy. We are still taxing ourselves as a manufacturing society, and there are very few manufacturing firms.
It's a good segue over to the state issues because, as you point out, Governor Rauner supports an expansion of the sales tax.
Service tax.
He supports an expansion of the sales tax to include services as well as products.
Correct.
And so
We
he
think
supports
he
what
says
you
that.
just said. Oh, I know. I heard him say that.
Well, Mr. Rauner has won an election without using too many nouns, but nevertheless.
He did a fine job. Don't show how you say you're the white line down the middle of the road.
Absolutely.
And you go knocking Governor Rauner just because he happens to be a conservative on fiscal.
I don't care how conservative
just because he happens to be
he
a
ran a
Republican.
brilliant campaign without saying what he's going to do. I think it's great.
He did say we have to get spending under control.
Well, that's sure.
He did
That's like
say
saying I love my
can't keep raising
mother.
taxes.
And that's
He
because I love my
did give
father.
every indication so far he stopped the income tax increase. He let the income tax
he let
roll
it
back to 3.75. He has stopped the move by Democrats who
Now,
said
just
they
stop
wanted
right
to
there.
increase it.
If you can't pay your bills, as the state can, because the state's in bigger trouble than Chicago. If you can't pay your bills with this increase, with the temporary income tax, how are you going to pay your bills without it?
Well, because you're going to have growth in the economy.
But you don't have time
You
for that kind
understand?
of growth.
You do have some time.
You don't have any.
There's always time. There was time to wait for Paul to be on the show because he couldn't do it for a few weeks, and I just waited. And now he's here, and we're every bit as good as if he had been here 3 weeks ago. No, we're better. You are better. We got better predictions closer to the election.
We have a
Sometimes
$6 billion
time is on your
debt.
side.
$6 billion debt for the state that's going up. We have a pension crisis that is absolutely $110 billion deficit.
Okay, smarty pants. If you're so smart.
Not smart, I'm just telling you the facts.
Yeah,
Sometimes
okay.
those interfere with your theories.
What are the Democrats, your buddies, friends?
Not my friends either, absolutely.
Okay, so Senate President Cullerton, somebody who said, I think, 3.5, look, Pat Quinn said 3.5 in 2010, this is a temporary income tax increase. We're only increasing it from 3 to 5% for 4 years, and after 4 years, it'll come back, not completely, to 3.75. And you know what Pat said before the election? It changed my mind. Now, Paul, so if Pat thought we could have lived with 3.75 4 years ago, why can't we? Why can't we streamline government? Why can't we make education more efficient? Why can't we make Medicaid more efficient? Those are the big ticket items. And pensions. Why can't we improve pensions? If statewide, if you improve pensions, if you improve Medicaid, if you improve education,
Isn't it great when you use a word like improve, like it means something?
Reform.
Oh, that's another one. You know what reform is? It's like love. It's often in the eyes of the beholder. But the reality is that reform means nothing, improve means nothing. How are you specifically going to do it? Are you going to cut? Are you going to tax? Where are you going to get the money? Who are you going to hurt? Deal with those issues and then I'll listen to you.
Okay.
Because what you're doing right now is just gibberish.
On education, we've already said it, so I only reference my viewers to the prior conversation in the show. We're going to reform it by having Rahm and Rauner, who agree on this, way more charter schools, way more opportunity, way more efficiency, improve quality, cut costs. What are we going to do on Medicaid? We're going to do what the state started to do, which is scrub those rolls, make it more into a low-income program to help people who are truly needy, not a middle-class program. And you know, that was going on, and we were cutting out people who weren't even in the state, and then the Democrats put the kibosh on that audit. So
by the way, you're right down the middle on this,
that.
I can tell.
What?
Go ahead, you're right down the middle. You're not partisan at all. That's good.
You know, Paul, if you want to...
You know, if you cut Medicaid for every dollar you cut, you lose 3?
It's not true. Who told you that? Give me a cite.
Paul Green.
Okay. And last, Paul, pensions are a major issue. You and I would agree on that.
Absolutely.
And we know, don't we, that the average state employee makes more than the average civilian.
Saying all that is fine.
So you've
How
got-
do you deal with the issue?
Well, the first thing you do is introduce 401Ks, not as a pilot, not as a
How do you
test.
get it through the legislature?
It's
How about the
gonna say-
Supreme Court? How about the judges?
Well, I would go to them too because they're elected. What would you do about pensions to cut pension costs?
I think what the legislature passed, I would hope the Supreme Court would fool everybody and support it. I think
And
that
if they
there should
don't,
be,
what would you do?
there should be a limit on the amount of the compounded interest. It should be only for people at the lowest levels, absolutely.
That's not a part of the bill, or is it?
It eventually will be.
But it's not now.
Not now.
Okay.
So you realize that right now, Jeff, and this is a fact, that if we don't worry, and now we're off Chicago, we're on the state, that right now, the pension payments, and one of the few things Pat Quinn did that was absolutely correct, was we're now paying it out of operating funds, is going to eat up, within a very short time, a quarter of the operating budget for the state of Illinois, which will cut into education, will cut into all the other programming. So Mr. Rauner could talk using words like improve and all those other reform, all those other meaningless words.
Berkowitz eyes. Or Berkowitz eyes, some would say.
Yes. Let's just say
or green eyes.
Jeff eyes. And the reality is that someone has to pay and someone has to get. And I'm just suggesting
and
to
how
you.
do we learn that? And what discipline teaches what you just said? Because
Take one of my classes.
where did you go? Where did you get your training, Paul?
Oh, Jeff, you know the University of
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yes, your orals. You mean your oral prelims when you got your PhD at the University
Yes.
of Chicago. So Paul's done a lot of things. I mentioned, he's the most amiable guy around. When you go to the city of
Charming, I think is the
Chicago,
word you're looking for.
Charming. He's on WGN TV. He comes on
Radio.
the show.
Radio.
Excuse me, WGN Radio. He was known as Paul and the Pundits, right?
Paul and the Politician.
Paul and the Politicians. But most of all, he went to the University of Chicago, and it's a great institution, isn't it, Paul?
They don't need your help yet. They have an endowment that could buy this building 50 times over.
What's this building, Paul?
I don't know, but
the Evanston Services Center.
They love you here. They do.
Evanston Community Television.
Yeah, that's right.
Folks, our new home. Doesn't it look great?
ECT.
ECTV.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but so getting back to seriousness stuff, you just were talking about somebody pays, somebody loses. I was getting at that's economics. Life is a series of tough choices. That's what Milton Friedman essentially taught.
Did you ever have him for a class?
I did indeed. Okay, I did indeed. So he taught that life is a series of tough choices. Life is a series of trade-offs. That's what good economics teaches us. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. What would you do if the Supreme Court does hold, the state Supreme Court does hold pension reform, the pension reform bill that was passed by the legislature, unconstitutional? Then what would you recommend to Governor Rauner? What would you advise Governor Rauner?
To use some nouns and verbs, but I would suggest that he has to take a very strong position, which is going to be very difficult. He is facing a political monopoly on the part of the legislature. The Democrats have a supermajority. He's also facing legal obstacles, and he will
They have
learn
a supermajority where?
in both the House and the Senate.
The state House
They
and
have
the state Senate.
supermajorities, the Democrats.
That means they can override the
Anything
veto.
he does, but it's
So
not as
if
easy
they do
as it sounds.
something and the governor
It's
Rauner
not as
vetoes
easy as it
they can
sounds.
It's not as easy because some of those Democrats don't want to override because again they have to come up for election in either
Correct.
3 or 4 years.
There's one thing
And some of
I will
those
agree with
people,
you.
when he goes over the heads of Fullerton and Madigan, they're going to remember what these people did. The question is, what should Governor Rauner do if the Illinois Supreme Court holds the pension reform bill unconstitutional? What substantively should he do to deal with this issue?
I think he needs to, two things. One, I think he has to pursue the tax on services, just to get more money into the pot. Two, I think he has to, actually three things. One, a tax on services. Two, reinstitute the temporary income tax. Absolutely, he needs the revenue now to pay bills. And number three, I think they have to go back to the legislature and try and find a way to deal with this pension issue without hopefully winning a legal battle in the courts. It is not easy. This job is a very tough job. We're coming into this position. It's like when Emmanuel became
What's that
mayor.
last point? I didn't understand the third point, so go over it, because if I didn't, maybe I
Redo the law, which tries some way to modify the cost to the state for pensions, many of which now are going into six figures. You cannot.
redo it in
That's
a way that would be
unsubstantial.
constitutional.
Yeah, it's constitutional.
And what
and
do you think that would be? Because
put a monetary limit. In other words, anyone getting a pension under $30,000 or $40,000, any figure, they keep the 3% compounded, which means your pension every
think
year.
that would be constitutional? Why would it be?
Well,
you know what the Supreme Court will focus on, that clause that says you can't do anything to diminish the compensation that is
right,
accrued.
you can't diminish or impair
Wouldn't that
the
diminish
reality,
impair?
or else the Attorney General and the have to go to the court and try and do this whole thing about police powers.
Or you
That's
have
a
to,
state-
or you could amend the Constitution.
You may very well have to do that.
That would take 2 years, but
Well,
still.
even if it takes 2 years, it's better going down the road we're going on now.
So you and I might agree on that, an amendment of
It's
the
painful to
Constitution.
say yes.
Yeah, that amended so it allows the legislature to diminish the compensation.
Well, not
The
not-
pensions of employees.
Just to put even if you just got rid of the compounding thing,
Okay.
that's the issue. For people out there, real quick, if you have a pension in the state of Illinois, in 20 years, if it's compounded, it doubles. And if people are making a lot of money, that's not a lot of money to worry about. But when it was passed in 1970, but today, because the compounding factor is one of the key issues. So if you have it under a certain limit, that's different than if you're over it. But something has to be done. You just can't keep doing
Amend the
it.
Illinois Constitution.
That would be the ultimate, it would be
Have to do
tough,
that.
but it would be a hell of a battle. But I think the people would realize if it could be explained, if you, Jeff, could go around the state holding these kind of programs, informing the voters in all 102 counties, you could do a valuable service. to the
Damn good
people.
idea. Do you think some of those folks who fund the City Club of Chicago might want to underwrite that effort?
Especially if you go far, far away.
They would like to
Start off in Alexander County.
Oh, you're so funny. You're so charming and amiable.
Yes, I am.
So just to recap
That's
that.
called exile. Jeff.
So the first 2 points you made, we all understand about expanding the sales tax to include services, but that would only give you, I hear, about $700 million.
Which is a lot of money, but given where we are, not enough.
Right, and that second point you had, which was to increase the income tax
Just to go back to
level
where it was.
To where it was, from 3.75% on individual incomes now to 5%. And you would keep it there, you would not make it temporary, you would say
No,
keep it
keep
there all
it
the
there
time?
until we can pay our bills.
And then you might cut it after
Yeah,
you pay your
absolutely.
bills?
I'm
And
not
would
a
you-
big taxer.
You're not a big taxer?
No, I think
Did you ever
people,
meet a tax like you didn't like?
yes, a lot of them.
Okay. So, and also, would you increase the corporate income tax?
It has to, that's the law.
And it would
It's
go
8 to
back
5.
from pardon?
It's 8 to 5. The ratio is 8 to 5.
Oh, so if you increase the individual by law,
You have to also increase the corporate.
income tax?
Yes.
All right, folks, you heard it here. We only wish we had another hour. We don't. We hope Paul Green will come back again. Will you, Paul?
Oh, sure, Jeff.